Good evening and welcome to the UAV chat channel. This evening is our second episode and my guest tonight is Oli Dickinson from the south of England. Right, good evening Oli, how are you?
How are you doing, Andy? Yeah, how's it going?
You're fine, right. Thank you. Just for everybody that's watching this, just to let you know, I know Oli. Not this year, but last year, we set up a Southwest group of drone buddies, if you like. And a number of us got together and we actually went off and flew drones together. Bit what like Dave Jones did up in North Wales. Sadly, we only got that one event, but myself and Oli did meet up with Paul Cousins. Hi, Paul. Hope you're watching this. Just after the first lockdown, and we went to Valley of the Rocks down in, is it Cornwall or?
That was in Devon.
Devon. Yeah. And that was a really good morning. I actually took coffee down with me for Oli because I knew he was going to say he was going to sleep in his car overnight. And I woke him up. Well, I didn't wake him up. I parked behind him and I did think about shooting the horn, but I thought, no, I wouldn't be that cruel. But yeah, I supplied him with a coffee and we had a good morning, wasn't it? It was good.
It's brilliant. Yeah. No, and enjoyed that. Really good. A beautiful place. If anyone wants to fly there, Valley of the Rocks, incredible place.
Just be careful about the wind though, because it can get windy down there.
Yeah, it's funneled. It's like a valley, so it kind of does funnel a bit. But yeah, no, beautiful, beautiful.
We were really, really lucky that morning. I think time before I went there, it was, even though it was hot, it was blowing a gale. Oli has already seen the questions that I'm going to ask him this evening, so there's no hidden agendas anywhere. We're not promoting anybody or anything. This is just a casual conversation. Obviously, Oli has a business that he does, and we'll get into that a bit later on. So let's start off with the first question, which is, what part of the country are you actually from?
So I'm in Plymouth, in Devon, just on the border with Cornwall. Beautiful area of the country. Yeah, so I can reach across the southwest. Yeah, not bad.
And so what got you into flying drones particularly?
Well, it all stems from background in photography, about 13 years of learning the art and still learning the art very much so. But about a couple of years ago, or maybe even 2.5 years ago, I started seeing some incredible images on social media and things like that of which were clearly aerial photographs. And so I thought, wow, I'd love to do that. And so I saved up and eventually got a drone just so I could get that third dimension, if you like, or different view from what I was normally getting with the ground camera. And yeah, that's really it.
And obviously, like you say, the advantages with a drone is that you can get a different perspective of your scene, if you like. But obviously, it also leads you not just from starting in photography, it also leads you into videography. And I know, like with yourself, that's also been a huge part for you.
Well, to be honest, I'd never touched videography before I got a drone. Never even thought of it. And the drone taught me so much. You know, it started off kind of very basic, getting the very basic shots, using very basic editing, which, and then you kind of get more experimental. You see other people's work, and that inspires you to try out new things and new type of compositional shots. And it builds up. I mean, I've still got so much to learn, but the shots I can get now are are exactly what clients so far have had, and they're very happy. And so, but it's art in general is, you're always learning, and you know, with a ground camera, you know, you see other things that other people are trying, and you think that's really inspiring. I want to put my touch on that, and I think that's how you learn and grow in this art.
I mean, I suppose you're quite fortunate in the respect of the area that you live, because you got some beautiful coastline and so forth. But
Mm.
there are sort of areas that are, how can we put it, that are no-go areas for even just normal photography, but especially for drone photography or UAV photography. How
Yeah, yeah.
how
Sorry,
do
mate.
you
Yeah.
see that maybe sort of changing in the course of the coming year or so?
It all depends on how closely people play by the rules, I think. I mean, the key thing about, as everyone who's listening to this now, I'm sure knows, the key thing is understanding the areas you can and can't go in your local area, or where you're going to fly. Because it's going to have a long-term impact if people do disrespect the rules, fly places they shouldn't. It's just going to tighten up. Regulations are going to tighten up, and it's just going to make, certainly for hobby flyers, it's just going to be a nightmare. But they're there for a reason, you know. They're there to be respected. You know, it might be frustrating. They might be over areas that are incredibly beautiful, but you know, you got to look under that, and you got to think, understand why they're there, and if you understand why they're there, sometimes you can apply to fly there. You know, it's not
Yeah.
always absolutely no. It's just ask before you fly, or double check before you fly. You know, so yeah,
The
that's
thing is, I mean, lots of people, including myself and probably yourself, started researching, looking at YouTube, and America is obviously been flying drones for probably a lot longer than what we have.
mm,
And they originally were doing things, how can we put it, slightly different than us. They would see how far they could fly a drone,
mm,
in respects of horizontally as well as vertically.
yeah,
Um, Obviously, now the FAA, which is the Aviation Authority for America, is now cracked down on all that. But there's still a lot of videos out there that new people that are looking into getting a drone, they see that. And I think maybe one of the problems with what's out at the moment, which is the new Mini or the Mini 2, the people think, oh, I can fly 500 meters, but actually, no, it doesn't actually work like that. You've got to be able to see that drone. So it might be less than 500 meters to fly a Mini.
yeah.
Lots of people are, like I say, I think they take too much from other countries, and instead of actually looking within the UK and speaking to people within the UK about what they do with that particular model.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, exactly the sort of videos I saw before I got my first drone, where the experimental ones where they see how far it could go, and they just get it back with 1% battery, or whatever it is, or 5% before it automatically lands. But I mean, I was guilty as everyone else. You know, when I first got the drone, I would send it out and see how far it would go, and that was my mistakes. I think a majority of drone flyers will confess to sending it and being experimental at the early stages until they realise why the rules are there. And actually doing the PFCO, that taught me exactly the safety reasons behind everything, and the thinking behind everything, and that kind of really woke me up to some of this. I wasn't doing anything dangerous. I mean, the stuff I was, when I first got it, I might send it, you know, just beyond 500 meters or whatever. I mean,
Mm.
that's not legal, but it's not. I wasn't sending it over anything dangerous, but you know, just out at sea. But yeah, it's really important to communicate with people who are getting drones not to do that kind of like do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Because you know, it's important that now that the regs are getting tighter, that I mean, I would say to anyone, you know, okay, I made mistakes when I first got the drones, but that's what I've learned from, and I would like to think that I could pass on and say, look, just don't do it, because you will not be insured if that drone, anything happens to that drone. It doesn't matter what insurance you have. If you go over 500 meters, that's it. Goodbye to insurance and warranty of the drone.
Yeah.
And secondly, if you can't see the drone, you don't know where it is, especially small ones. I mean, the other drone I use is my Inspire. I mean, you can see that from a few hundred meters, but I always keep that really close. I never let that go more than 150, maybe 200 meters, simply because it's a big lump and I want to be able to track exactly where it is and stuff like that. So there are some misleading videos out there, which I would advise anyone to stick by the rules, and then we can all have a good time with our hobby.
I mean, some of the Facebook groups that we both belong to, like Drone Flyers UK and Drone Flyers UK and beyond, you know, they're fantastic groups, and you know, people that have been flying drones for a long time will always give new people the right information. But it's the ones that don't actually even get that far. They literally go out and buy the drone because they've seen an advert or they've seen it down Curry's or whatever. They get it out of the box, they charge it up, and then whack it up in the garden. And they think, oh yeah, this is brilliant. And then they join a group, and then they say, oh, look at my video, and it's like, no, that's illegal.
It's very. These groups are not policing. That's the wrong word, but the advice in these groups is very strict. I mean, everyone in these groups sticks to the rules. I mean, we've had we won't name any names, but there's been certain type of video that's been going around flying over stadiums and things like that, where we've worked hard to find out and to report, not out of anything malicious. It's just genuine concern for people's safety, and also the fact that if this thing does go on, that the people who do it legally especially are the first ones who are going to suffer, because the rules will get tightened.
I mean, for people that sort of even new now, I mean, this is one of the reasons why the drone registration came in last year. You know, and even though the Mavic Mini at the moment is takeoff mass, because that's what we should be talking about. It's not the weight, it's the takeoff mass. It's 250 grams. People are still confused that they say, well, it's based on the weight, and it's not. It's the takeoff mass when it takes off. That they will eventually probably have to register those drones and take the online course, which, you know, it is basically the drone safe code. It's very, very simple compared to, say, for instance, doing the A2 CFC or even the PFCO or GVC, which is now coming to replace that. So, you know, I think people have to realize that, you know, the heavy part of the drone is the battery. And if that drops out of the sky and hits somebody hard, or if they fly it into somebody, and I remember, I'm sure that you actually caught your finger with one of the blades on your drone, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. I remember that very well.
Yeah,
just playing around with it at home.
Yeah, I remember you posting that, and they can be really dangerous.
Really dangerous, yeah.
And without sort of realizing it. And people, like you say, they find out by their mistakes, either trying to catch a drone awkwardly, or doing something a little bit silly, and then it gets out of control, and then it ends up hitting somebody or worse. So that's why, for those that are new that are saying, well, you know, it's only a toy. Well, it's not a toy. You're spending £500. That's quite an expensive piece of kit, but you are flying in airspace, and I think that's one of the main things that people don't really understand when they buy a drone for the first time without doing any research. Would you agree?
100%. I think the use of like you just said, the use of the word toy is a really destructive description of a drone, because it, like you say, it definitely is anything but a toy. And the thing about these modern drones is they're their own worst enemy in a way, because they're so easy to do the basics with. They're so easy. I mean, they'll hover, they'll do everything for you, really. So people get them and they think, right, all I need to do is, you know, up, down, left, right, side to side, front, back. I mean, it's so simple. So they get into a kind of what I found, a false sense of security. Sorry, is the word I'm looking for. And so they that's why people just send them as far away as they like. They don't have to look at the drone because they can look at their screen, and and it's so stable. And what they don't realize is actually these drones are designed so that they're so finely balanced that anything that goes wrong will send that drone flying. So it just takes one blade to go and that drone will be a brick. It just takes, you know, these small things, like you say, the battery. I mean, I learned firsthand that my first drone, when I had it, had a complete battery failure. Luckily, it was over the sea when I was doing it, and it wasn't far away from me. It was only about 50 meters from me, and it just plummeted. And it was just because of battery failure. But if I'd been doing that, messing around over my street or over people's houses, then you've got not only just a falling battery, but you've got a falling lithium battery. And if those batteries hit the ground hard enough, they can catch fire and cause a devastating fire. So it's crucial that people realize how extraordinary these things are, how much they can bring you, and not just in terms of fun, but in terms of imagery as well. But actually, they do need to be treated with respect. And you've got to understand that there are laws there, not just to be annoying, but for good reason.
It's there to protect you as the pilot, but also the general public. I mean, quite a lot of people, even in the hobby, take out drone insurance purely for the basis they don't want any comeback if there was an accident. And I think you know, that is the right way to do things. That, you know, like, it's like a lot of things. There's a right way and a wrong way. And yes, it's a hobby and it can be expensive, but it's like photography. You know yourself. I mean, you buy one camera and you probably use that for a short period of time, and then you buy another camera, or you buy a new lens and then you replace the lens with a better lens. And it's one of those kind of scenarios that you build up to it. So you start off maybe with a mini or with a cheaper version, and then you want to move up into the Mavic Pro, and then into your case where you've done your PFCO and you've invested into the DJI Aspire, which is a real professional drone that has, I think, how many lenses can you change on the Aspire?
Oh, there's a variety of different focal lengths. I mean, I've only got a couple, to be perfectly honest. I know that DJI do 4. Can't think of the focal lengths just right now. It's a 4/3 sensor, so it's a bit different to what I'm used to with focal lengths, because it's all messes up with the sensor size. But it's got a range from wide to zoom.
Yeah. So, like I said, I mentioned you've done your PFCO. What made you decide that you wanted to go down that route?
Well, it all started when I just really, well, I was, like I said, I'll going way back, loving photography. Got into the drone, saw what this drone could do. And with the photography, I was always doing it part time. So I was always just selling prints, and I
Yeah.
never actually kind of got into like doing commercial kind of like, going and doing a specific job. I was just quite successful at selling quite good prints I was getting. So I then decided to think, well, wait a second, I was looking at the drone market, and there wasn't too many people in the Southwest. There are a few, but it's not too many.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I need to get on it now before it really kicks up. Because although it's growing, there are still spaces. If you see what I mean, there are still. It's not too saturated. I mean, some people will tell you it's really saturated, but actually, there's quite a lot of business out there for people if they're willing to find it. And so I thought, right, well, let's go for it. So I just looked it up. You had to do this PFCO. That wasn't too easy, but got through it and never looked back, really. I mean, the first year of business wasn't really business, it's portfolio building. But this year's just been phenomenal. Really, the work started to pay off.
It's a lot, like you say, really you're kind of invested in yourself and your time. And obviously, if you've already got a day job and you're sort of trying to get this moving so that you could eventually move from that day job to doing what you love, which is flying drones for a living, that's quite a lot of work to be put in, isn't there?
Yeah. It's in terms of it, I mean, the biggest thing I found starting off is it's really about showing what you can do, and in order to do that, you've got to have enough of a portfolio. You've got to have, and it does mean doing work, if you like, for free, but you're not doing it for free. You're doing it as an investment to show other people this is what I can do.
Yeah.
So I think that's what. But the key is also is to not fall into the trap of, as soon as you've got a sizable portfolio, decent portfolio, is to get off the free train and to stay right. Here are my prices. This is what, I'm running a business now. And that's kind of the transition I found really difficult, because the trouble is, of course, I love doing the work. I could be given an hour's job, and just out of pride, I could spend 3 hours on it. And that's kind of thing I've had to clamp down on, because I just love editing. I love being on site. I'll be on there early because I'm just edging to fly. I'm edging to get the cameras out. That's your own worst enemy in a way. I mean, you wouldn't be doing that if you were doing a job, you just doing it for the money. No way would you. So it's really important to break that, get from portfolio building, but then start to think, right, okay, now I need to run a business and understand how to run a business. And that's been a real big learning curve as well.
Did you start off with the Mavic Pro when you had your PFCO, or did you?
Yeah,
just.
I had. Yeah, no, man. I had the Mavic 2 Pro, which again I will keep arguing that it is pound for pound the best drone that DJI do. I don't know about the other mates because I haven't flown any other types of drone. But pound for pound, phenomenal imagery, phenomenal how small it is, what you can get out of something so small. It's incredible. So I started off with that when I was doing my PFCO. But the Mavic 2 isn't enough to make a commercial business, really.
Yeah.
Only because when people, like when I've had clients and I've turned up with a Mavic 2 Pro, they're like, what's that? And because they don't realize how good it is, but it looks kind of like something on a shop shelf, a toy. It's not a toy, but it looks like it to the untrained eye. So that's why, and not just for that reason, but I also got the Inspire 2 because it gave me, I could work out what lenses I could use. I could have dual pilot. I could do that. And also, again, It's not for completely the right reason, but it looks the job. It looks like you've got a serious bit of equipment, which it is. It is a serious bit of equipment. But starting off, anyone starting off, Mavic 2 Pro is absolutely perfect to start off with. It's great for roof surveys. It's great for general photography of, you know, if you're doing it for small local business, it's absolutely fine. I mean, I started off with that and my crop camera, and only recently have I actually invested in a full 5D full frame. So I was starting with very basic equipment, but if you start with basic equipment and you get the most out of that equipment, and you understand that equipment to its absolute, completely understand that equipment, then you're in the right place to say, right, okay, I've got the best out of Mavic 2 and my camera body, the old Canon, and so okay, so now I can go up to the next level. Now I can get the Inspire. Now I can get the full frame, because then you're not. I wouldn't have wanted to buy the Inspire if I knew that there wasn't a reason. You know, there wasn't reasons to get it.
Yeah.
So I knew that I was getting the best out of that Mavic 2 Pro, and
there are limitations and with everything.
There are. I mean, there are. I mean, like I say, the Hasselblad is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But you can't change the lens. Yeah. I mean, really, that's it. I mean, that's the only criticism I've got in terms of, apart from it being quite small and not looking like, you know, if someone's paying you like, I can't think of a day rate of, as an example, 750 quid, and you're turning up with a Mavic 2. I mean, it might be the perfect drone for the job, but you kind of need, even if it's just in the trunk of your car, it's important actually, I keep going off a tangent here, it's important to have a backup drone anyway, and I'll say that right from the start, because I mean, DJI, they release upgrades, and sometimes overnight, even if you've got everything ready the night before, they might release an upgrade. You might be in an area where there's no signal and your drone would take off, and it would be pretty embarrassing to say to a client, so I can't fly, my drone's not updated. You know, how do you explain that, really? So it's important to have a backup UAV. But yeah, it starts small and grow big. I wouldn't advise anyone to invest in massive machinery that they're going to use in auto settings or use, you know,
not unless they've won the lottery.
Well, yeah. If you've got a massive investor behind you, or you've won the lottery, go ahead.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I know that you have a great love of photography, and earlier this year, you entered the National Photography Awards.
Yeah.
And you did extremely well, didn't you?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal experience. So yeah, I won. I got invited along. Or I entered, then got shortlisted, and then found out I was a finalist for the British Photography Awards, which is based in London, in the Savoy. Very nice hotel, I might say. And I was entered into the architecture category for a shot I did on Rainhead, which was basically a chapel on the edge of a cliff. And I used a drone to auto orbit with the auxiliary light that was highlighting the subject, and long exposure and correct focal length, and allowed that chapel to be completely illuminated with a halo above and the stars in the background.
On your back screen then.
Yeah, it is circling on here.
Yeah.
And I got the most votes, and I was awarded the People's Choice Award for that one, which was
big congratulations for that. I mean, I did congratulate you again then, but I congratulate you again because it's one of those photography awards that, you know, you've really got to have amazing work to even be considered to be in the list, let alone win. So hats off to you. Maybe you'd like to explain maybe a little bit how you got that shot, because there might be people that are interested in sort of doing nighttime photography with a drone, and we must stress that you didn't use the Inspire for that. You used a Pro.
No, this was pre-Inspire days. This is when I just started out. So before I got a drone, I was really into long exposure. I loved experimenting with it, and the thing I loved experimenting was with things like water, creating icy water, things like that, creating streaks of light. I used to love doing that. Creating like ghosts in the day with people, things like that. Anyway, so I've obviously got the Mavic 2 Pro, and the great thing about the Mavic 2 Pro actually, it's got something called an auxiliary light, which is a landing light effectively. So as it comes down to land, it illuminates the ground so you can see where it's landing. But you can also have it turned on permanently, which actually is quite handy if you're flying 50 meters away because you can't see the thing. So having an extra light on sometimes just enables you to see it. Anyway, going back to this story, I wanted to create some light painting with this drone, and I thought, well, I'd seen a few people do it with drones over in Utah, over kind of like the Great Plains over there.
Yeah.
I hadn't really seen it in the UK. I might have maybe subconsciously seen a few things, but nothing really that struck me. And so I thought, well, I knew about this chapel, Rame Head, and it's not far away from me. And so one day I went over there and I just planned it. I just thought, well, on the perfect day, what I want to do is I want to have the cameras set up here. I want the drone to be circulating. I thought about the height, made sure there's no objects around to block it or anything like that. It was absolutely fine. And so one day, it was perfect, clear sunset, and it was absolutely beautiful sky. And I thought, tonight's the night. It just came to me, tonight's the night. I've got to do it tonight. I don't care, because I just came back from the gym. I was absolutely tired, but I thought, I don't care. I'm going to do it tonight. So anyway, at 12 o'clock that night, left my house, went to Rame Head. And now Rame Head, because it's in the middle of absolutely nowhere, it's pitch black, which is great for astrophotography. An absolute scary place to be at 1 a.m. when there's no one else there. Well, when you think there's no one else there, and I'll get to this in the story. So as I was walking down, because it's a little bit of a walk down to this chapel, I was walking down, and suddenly this red light appeared in front of me, about 10 meters away. And I've never been so scared. And it turned out to be another photographer who was using red lights, so his eyes didn't get distracted from the stars. But that was a shock. That was a shock. Anyway, so I carried on walking down, spoke to him, carried on walking down, told him what I was going to do, and he said, yeah, go on, don't worry about it. And so I set the drone up, got it to hover over this chapel. Now, the trouble is with orbital mode is that it does use, to some degree, the cameras underneath the drone, so it can fix on a point. Well, the trouble is it's pitch black, so it couldn't. So I had to use torches to kind of show it vaguely the roof. Yeah. So then it could get its point, GPS point, to orbit around. So that started, and it started to orbit, and I set the camera up. Now, I'm sure a lot of your listeners will know that important thing with certainly astrophotography is to have the aperture as wide open as you can to get the light in. But the trouble with wide aperture is really short focal length, really short depth of field. So I put it into infinity focus. And I think the ISO wasn't too high, didn't want to be too high, didn't want too much grain. It was probably about 2,500, something like that. Not high at all. And I 13 seconds exposure, and after a few clicks and a few experimental ones, I think I'll change the exposure length a little bit while this was going around, just to be. The more you experiment on site, the more chances you have of getting the right shot. Yeah. So anyway, I came back, and with a very, very little editing, just saw this shot I created. I thought, well, that's got to be entered into a few competitions, because if I don't enter that, then it's going to go to waste. So I entered it into a local competition, which was the Cornwall Outstanding Area of Natural Beauty, something like that. It's just a Cornwall.
That's a long title.
Yeah, I got to the final of that one, got a prize in that one, and then I also entered it into the British Photography Awards, which I never had heard before, but now obviously I'm very aware of it, which is it celebrates and and it's a competition for basically the best of British photography, as it says on the tin, really. And that's not just in Britain; that's worldwide. As long as you're based in Britain, you can enter it. And yeah, so I entered that into the drone category, actually. But then I was quite surprised when I said I'd been shortlisted, but they'd entered me into the architectural one, which I was a bit miffed with, because it wasn't showing off the architecture really, which is probably why I didn't actually win the architectural category, which is probably why I got the People's Choice instead. But yeah, it was.
The competition normally has an area at the photography show at the NEC, which they hold every year, and of course this year with COVID that got cancelled. Otherwise it probably would have been on show there. Which I'm still waiting to hear when I'm going to get my money back from that show. But anyway, it's another story.
Yeah, I mean, it got entered in. It was in magazines like Country Life because of it. And other ones, some religious ones as well. But so really
kind of helped you along in sort of motivation in some respects to go for that PFCO in that respect, I guess.
Yeah, massively. Yeah. That, well, I mean, I'd already had my PFCO by the time I did that shot.
Right.
Although I was portfolio building, so I wasn't earning any money from it.
Yeah.
It was just a case of building the business. And it was only really when I won the British Photography Awards was the fact that I can market that I'd got that acclaim.
Yeah.
And so I could then people start to look at you twice then. And that's quite an important point, really.
Absolutely. I mean, this year we've seen that there are new regulations coming in through ESA or EASA, which is now bringing out some new courses which are now being signed off by the Civil Aviation Authority, which is the A2C of C, which the one I'm actually doing myself. And Paul Cousins, who we were speaking about earlier, he recently did his, and he was telling me about his company. And I must admit, I can see the reason why to do this course. And I think people now might see that actually the drone registration wasn't a big thing, that with this new regulations that are coming in, that actually it's going to open up a small marketplace for the hobbyists to be able to do more stuff in more areas. Would you not agree?
Yeah. These new courses I think are a real godsend, because it kind of breaks down the barrier between hobbyists and doing commercial work.
Yeah.
Because it's always been, you always had to have permission for commercial operations. Well, now you can do the A2CO of C. I'll never get it right. I think, yeah. And that eliminates that kind of barrier, where, because there are incredibly talented people,
absolutely,
who don't have a PFCO, don't want to go through all the red tape to get a PFCO, but can't sell their work. And to have something like this qualification where, okay, you might be limited in terms of meters to get to somewhere, but you can still sell or do work for people, and make money off your talent, which is really, really crucial. Yes, the PFCO is still relevant because it does allow you to get closer. It does allow you to get into restricted areas that you might not be able to otherwise. But the other thing that they're bringing in as well are bolt-ons. So you don't need a optional safety case, an OSC, operational safety case, sorry. You can just do bolt-ons. So you can have, let's say you want to get closer to people, you can just do that and prove to the CAA how you're going to get closer without hurting anyone, or you might go for beyond visual line of sight. You can just do that, so you can really mold it to your business and really create a package. And I think I can imagine the A2 doing something not too dissimilar to that. I know with C category drones, you'll be able to get within 5 meters, is it, or something?
Yeah, I mean, as it stands at the moment, because none of the drone manufacturers have actually brought out a C-class drone yet. Mm-hmm. So we've got this legacy where if you've got a Mavic Pro, Platinum Pro 2, and it's under 4 kilos, you can use that, and you can use it in built-up areas. The biggest line is that the way that it was kind of sold to me within the course is that it's about being not flying over the top of people. That's the only thing that you can't do with the A2. Where obviously with the GVC or the PFCO, you've got more scope to do different things like sort of festivals and stuff like that. But basically, you can't fly over people. So if you're like me that enjoys doing sunrises, it means that you can go into your city like Bristol, where I live. I can go down and I can film the SS Great Britain, and as long as there's nobody around and I keep 50 meters away from that obstacle or object, I'm legally flying. And as long as I've laid down all the safety precautions that need to be done, and I have the certificate, that's what I can do. And I think, obviously, like you say, that you can go on to do, if you've got some scaffolding company that you get on really well with, or then they say, oh, would you be able to do a sort of roof survey? As long as you have those people under your control, you can do it. And as long as that the people that live within those houses are made aware, and they stay indoors or whatever, they're not out and about, then obviously if there is a problem with a drone, nobody's going to get hurt. But obviously you need to take out public liability insurance. And I know now that this is where I think more insurance companies are starting to look at drones in a little bit of a better light in some respects, because of having these certifications from the CAA. That means that you're not an idiot going out with a drone, you're actually going to be doing it properly. So there's going to be some good drone insurance and incentives to go with certain companies to do that. I mean, when you say about the course, I mean, I must admit, I'm just covered this section about cloud cover and different cloud formations and whatever. And I must admit, that's well past my head. So I'm completely baffled by that. I watched the weatherman after the news, and I understand the low pressures and the high pressures, but it's a very intense course, but it's really well set out, and it's an online course. That's the great thing about these courses, they are online. So you're not having to go and spend 4 days in a classroom doing these courses. You can do them online, you can do them as in your own time. You can take up to a year if you want to do the course. And if you don't pass the exam first time, then you can resit it as many times as you need to. But I think, it's great, like you say, next stage or generation of hobby pilots becoming able to do more with their artwork, if that's what their intentions. If they want to do the odd job with some scaffolding company or survey or whatever, or house agency wants footage of a very plush house taken, if you get those odd jobs, then you can do them, and you can do it all legally. The courses aren't that expensive compared to what, you know, PFCOs were maybe this time last year. I mean, I don't know how much did you, can you say how much you paid for your course?
Yeah, I mean, I probably got overcharged really. Mine was, I didn't get much change out of £1,000.
Yeah.
I know some courses now are doing it for 600 quid.
Yeah.
What have you. Yeah. So they are an investment.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with the work that you're doing now, I mean, obviously you've been doing photography, so I guess you've been using software like Lightroom or Photoshop. Is that the kind of software you use?
Yeah, I use Adobe products, Lightroom, Photoshop, Premiere Pro, and After Effects. My main four to go to.
Are you a PC man or a Mac man?
Mac. It used to be PC, but the PC I had just couldn't cope, and so upgrading that, I just thought, well, Macs generally have a lot less trouble with viruses and stuff, and got invested in pretty high spec Mac, and it's been the best investment really. I mean, yeah.
I have to say, I mean, I changed the Mac a couple of years ago myself after having PC, and I mean, I've had a computer for donkey years, and I can't remember the number of times I've had to reformat my hard drive because the whole thing crashed left, right, and center Windows. But you know, it is each their own. But there's some good softwares out there. I mean, there's a free software, DaVinci Resolve, is it? I think they've just brought out a new version of their software, which apparently is quite good.
Yeah, no, apparently DaVinci is really, really good. I mean, I wouldn't say Adobe is for everyone, or isn't not necessarily the best. I mean, there are other ones like DaVinci Code. The only reason I use Adobe really is because of my use of Lightroom and Photoshop. It kind of all syncs in together.
Yeah.
So you can do something on After Effects and it's immediately updated on Premiere Pro. You can do something on Lightroom and immediately transport it to Photoshop, and it just makes workflow quicker.
Great thing, isn't it, with the Adobe products is that you can start off in one software, move it into another one, and then into another one, and then move it back to the original one.
Yeah,
it's almost like Apple, but an Adobe version of it. I mean, I must admit, I got Final Cut Pro, and I purely for the basis that it was a one-off payment, and they do guarantee free updates. And I mean, I do use Photoshop and Lightroom, so I've got the Adobe Cloud's subscription for that. But you know, again, it's for people that are getting into flying drones. They're learning photography and they're learning videography, and it's probably something that they never even thought that they would actually get into from flying a drone.
No, not at all.
It's quite strange. I mean, I would never have thought after doing 13 years of photography, I would be doing videography. But I get like you, I enjoy it. I enjoy the sort of researching of the area that I want to go and film and kind of try and work out how I'm going to film it and what have you. But also like the editing, like you say, you enjoy that part of it as well. Do you? I mean, one area with video editing is color grading. There are lots of companies selling packages of lots lookup tables, as they call them. Do you color grade yourself, or do you use packages?
I color grade. I sometimes use some of the Premiere Pro LUTs. I mean, I'm not that. My editing's okay. It's not at I mean, a lot of my work, I'm handing over material and letting them edit it.
Right.
So I don't really have massive experience in like serious high-end editing where you might use loads of different LUTs. The LUTs I use generally work. I generally have LUTs for different types of scenes. Now I do color grade, but again, it's kind of doing the basics that I would do in photography, like the shadows, highlights, etc., contrast, all of that. And then you do have the curves you can mess around with, and the hue and the saturation and the and other things. So yeah, it's still pretty basic, my editing, but it does what I need for the moment. I mean, like I say, the biggest jobs I've had and the most complex so far with the big contracts have been where I just literally just hand over the data at the end and walk away. And yeah, I mean, they're pretty nice jobs, really. But color grading is, you get some seriously incredibly talented people color grading. I mean, they could do some phenomenal, they can just completely transform a scene, a bit like in Photoshop almost, where they're just kind of like, it's completely different from reality. But yeah,
I must admit, I mean, Photoshop is, it's a industrial software, and it has been for many, many years. And the great thing with Photoshop, well, I don't know if it's a great thing or not, but there is like 100 different ways of doing the same thing. But it's just finding your own unique style to your images and to your work. And I think that's part of it at the end of the day. But it's finding, like I said, there are loads of tutorials on YouTube. I mean, I did a degree in photography, professional photography, and I've learned over a number of years how to use Photoshop, but I've used it probably only 40% of what potentially it can do. I mean, Adobe Photoshop's just had another upgrade, massive upgrade. I haven't even had a chance to have a look at it yet, but it's on a massive upgrade now. And it's just a really, really powerful tool. I must admit, I do use a pen tablet for my work. I use a Wacom Intuos tablet for drawing, just so I can get that fine detail and what have you. But it's like new people coming into it, there's lots of free softwares out there at the moment, and DaVinci Resolve is one of them. And it's, from what I gather, it's quite a powerful piece of kit. And the fact that it's free, I think it's a great benefit for anybody that's going to be getting into doing drone videos and what have you to look at. If you then decide that you're doing more with your images, then I suppose you would agree that Lightroom would be the place to start first. Very simple software to use.
Personally, I wouldn't advise any new photographer or any new drone photographer to go into things like Photoshop, maybe even Lightroom. I would advise them to work out the settings on their camera, their composition, and maybe even going on a few photography courses and getting the shot right, because I mean, these softwares are very powerful and they can do a lot, but they can't change focus, they can't change the composition. So you've got to get that completely right before you enter into these bits of software. Personally, I use Photoshop to a very basic level. I don't do a lot within it. I might do a little bit of I might get, if someone, like, for example, some of the, I've been doing a lot of brand photography recently with some models, and one of them, I think one of the hairs a couple of hairs on the head was kind of like blowing in the wind, but we didn't notice it on set. And so I had to use Photoshop just to kind of take that away, erase that. And so that's handy for that kind of thing, but I don't do anything more complicated than that. My main go-to is Lightroom, because I mean, although my shots aren't perfect, I try to make sure that when I'm on the camera, I'm not shooting to edit. I'm shooting to try and get as best shot I can, and then the editing will just polish that off. I think a lot of people make a mistake of thinking, I'll just take a snap and the editing will sort it all out.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, for example, for anyone who's getting into photography, if you don't know the difference between RAW and JPEG, don't edit.
Yeah.
That's one of the most basic things I'll say. Learn what it's all about before buying these or investing in these bits of software.
Well, leading on to that, I mean, with your work, how do you do your research on a place that you want to go to? How do you go about that?
It used to be the planning I had for the ops manual and for the flight planning. I used to have 9 pages where I'd start off finding the address. Well, you'd already know the name and contact details because you've already sold they've already booked you. And things like local hospitals and things like that, you start off finding those. Then you go on to things like NOTAMs and restrictions, danger zones, and prohibited areas, that kind of thing. And then you'd go on to looking at just the general area about what are the risks around that area. And then it goes on to things like weather and creating a map of the plan. Now, I for the last few jobs, I've just started to use Drone Desk, and that thing is amazing.
Maybe
Dorian,
we've got a link in the description for that.
Yeah, put a link in there because it really, honestly, like for example, small things like finding local airfields, that's found for you already straight away. You don't have to look up telephone numbers for that. You've got local A&Es, you've got NOTAMs are automatically put in. Danger areas are automatically put in. So the only thing you have to do really with Drone Desk is then do the risk assessment of the general area of what objects are around, where people are, and what could happen in the worst case scenario, and then weather is updated immediately. So like all these things that probably take up half the time of planning are just done. So you can actually focus all your you can really focus on the important bit, which is making sure that where you're flying is really safe, and it do the rest for you. But yeah, it did take a while, like finding if there was a danger area, because there's very military around Plymouth, so you've got quite a few firing ranges, you've got lots of prohibited areas, and so you got to either contact the Navy or the port or people like that if you're flying in the middle of Plymouth. Or if you're going over east or west, there's firing ranges, so you've got to contact the military, that kind of thing. So that, I mean, that is quite a lot to do when you're flying in Plymouth, really. But the Drone Desk, I can't recommend it enough.
I mean, it kind of leads on to what comes next in drones. I mean, DJI brought out the smart controller. It's a fantastic piece of kit. I mean, I love it. I love it and I hate it because I hate it is because it's Android. I wish they'd done an Apple version, but also they don't use Google Maps. They use I can't remember what they call them now, but it's some other map system. But you can hotspot it to your mobile phone so that you can actually get, a good floor plan of satellite view of the ground and what have you. But I think sort of when they bring out a C1, I think new things like information on other aircraft within the area to be showing up on that map on your controller would be really, really good. I think from a safety perspective, not just for you but for them as well. It'd be interesting to see what sort of DJI, and we talked all evening about DJI. I mean, there are other companies out there that do drones like Unique and Autel, but they just don't seem to have the I, they don't have the marketing structure to do that DJI have, but they also don't seem to want to plow the kind of technology that DJI has put into just for the sake of it. The Mavic Pro 2, where you've got, your different aperture, where you can change the aperture from f2.4 up. You can't do that on any other drone, apart from maybe from the Inspire. But on any other manufacturers, I don't think you can do that kind of thing.
No. No, I don't think so. No.
It's I say it's just going to be interesting to see what comes in the next year. It's going to be in the next year or so anyway, because the legacy only ends till 2023, I think it is. So it's going to be interesting to see what DJI do bring out to replace the Mavic Pro 2.
Yeah.
I know that with your work, you've been working on quite a large and very interesting project. You'd like to tell us about?
Yeah, so I was contacted by this media company in Plymouth. This was way back in March, actually, and I did some work with them with Greg Dyke over in Plymouth. He's built by buying some property, so I did some drone work showing kind of the start of this build of the property for him, and they're really happy. So they contacted me again in August, and they said, we've got the Mayflower autonomous ship, which is a ship that's going to sail across the Atlantic completely unmanned using artificial intelligence to guide it across, avoiding all kind of dangers on the way and doing scientific experiment. And yeah, it's we were filming it arriving in Plymouth, being unloaded into or being transported into the sea, and then the ceremony, which was the Mayflower ceremony, which celebrated 400 years since the original Mayflower left for America.
Yeah.
And we were there to film that ceremony. Now, because the media company did have a drone pilot, but he wasn't comfortable with sailing off the back of a tug. Certainly a tug that was moving in wind. And so I agreed, and because I had a lot of practice with the drone, I'd done quite a bit off boats, and I was comfortable with my abilities to control this thing. So I said, look, I'll do the Inspire off the back of the tug. And so they put me on the tug, and we followed this ship as it did a kind of parade around the Plymouth Sound, and I filmed it with the Inspire. The footage ended up on ITV, BBC, the American Embassy, American news channels had it on. It was a really big hit.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to have your footage shown.
And there's nobody on board this boat. It literally.
It's completely autonomous. Completely.
It's almost like a drone on water.
Yeah, it is. It is exactly that. It's a drone on water. Fascinating bit of equipment. Incredible bit of engineering by IBM and a couple of other companies that are behind it. And so anyway, I was contacted about 2 weeks later, and IBM came directly to me, not to a media company, but directly to me, and said, look, we need you to film the sea trials, because this thing needs to go out and learn how to cope and needs to get more data on what could be issues out at sea. And it needed to be filmed. And so they gave me a budget. They said, we want aerial and also ground videography for it. So I've hired another videographer. I've also hired someone to come onto the rib with me to catch the Inspire, because there's no way I'm going to try and catch the Inspire while trying to land it as well. That's while on the moving rib. I mean, that's just insane.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I might try it with a Mavic 2, but a $7,000 bit of kit, I'm not going to risk it. So I'm hiring this chap to come in. I'm going to teach him how to catch it safely. And and that's the best option for that. So anyway, yeah, I've got this contract, I've got this budget, and it's not gone ahead this month only because of the lockdown. Hopefully it will start in December, depending on lockdown. But whenever lockdown does finish, we will get to do this, and that could lead to other things. I mean, it could lead to filming the actual departure. It could lead to filming its progress across the Atlantic. Who knows? I mean,
that would be brilliant.
Yeah, it would be.
What's the end game with this boat? What's their sort of?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're looking into what artificial intelligence can do for certainly for vessels. They're thinking, if you could have a ship where you don't need to accommodate humans, you can put other things onto it where the humans would have been. And that could, for a moment, be scientific equipment. It could be extra cargo. It could be a multitude of things, that future boats could do. I mean, if this really works well, I don't want to speak for IBM, but I'd imagine the steps will be to create larger vessels that can carry things, and you never know. I mean, in 50 years' time, you might see waterways that are completely have these effective drone boats, whatever you like to call them, that are just navigating themselves and communicating with each other, and humans aren't involved. Now, I wouldn't want to see that, actually, because it's going to create lots of job losses at sea, isn't it? But it might be useful for other things, and I'm sure there's going to be a military aspect as well. If you can have a military kind of use, I can almost guarantee that.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating, and it shows that how technology is coming, how artificial intelligence is improving all the time. It's a potentially exciting yet scary future with AI, I think.
Well, it's the way things are going. I mean, our mobile phones. I'm from the days when I remember the floppy disk, which was 4 megabytes.
Yeah.
Now you've got one of these that is a supercomputer that can do everything: my banking, my filming, my horoscope, my books, my music, my whatever I wanted to do, and make phone calls. But technology over the last 20 years has just rocketed, literally.
And it will continue to. The more we understand, the more it will continue to rocket. I remember the first computer my dad, one of the first computers he brought home, had a gigabyte memory, 1 gig. Yeah. And that was massive back in the mid-90s. That was just obscene. We thought, wow, how are we going to store everything on 1 gig? Now, of course, 1 gig on an SD card is very small. So,
I mean, I remember the days of just actually writing DOS. That was it.
Yeah.
And they were quite big computers back then as well, compared to what we have today. I've got one last question for you.
Yeah.
Anybody that's looking to start out in getting a drone and maybe doing something with it, what bit of advice would you give them to set them on their way to doing something further?
I mean, in terms of going professional with it, do you mean, or
just going from flying a drone to doing photography, videography?
Yeah, I would. My biggest and number one advice would be just to love it, enjoy it. You spend hours learning how to fly it efficiently, how to create different maneuvers on it, so you can get the best shots. Flying it so it's safe. Experimenting with the camera, because there's lots of things you can do with the cameras on these things, and really just love it. I mean, it's such a fantastic hobby or job, or whatever you like to call it. You know, we're flying these machines into places that we couldn't go personally, and we get to take photos with it as well. So we're combining two much loved hobbies or passions. I mean, it's unbelievable. Just love it and see where it goes.
Yeah.
Keep an open mind. Keep an open mind. I would do, if you think it's going to be viable, to do a course on it, because it will teach you far more than you realise you knew. And one other bit of advice I would say is never assume you know it all. Sorry?
And it will allow you to get access more places as well.
Yeah, it will. Yeah, that will. But also, it will show you how little you know.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing I would say in anything, really, is you don't think you know it all, because I promise you don't know 1% of it.
Yeah.
And that's not me being arrogant. I don't either. This is me being, I've understood, the more I've got into this subject, the more I realise how much I've got to learn.
Yeah.
Because it's such a vast thing. I mean, it's not just about photography with drones, of course. It's also about going to mapping, things like that, search and rescue, things like that. So it's such a big, vast area that you could get into, but just love it, and don't give up. I've had setbacks. My first ever drone had a complete battery failure and fell out the sky, as I said earlier. But I knew that I had to challenge DJI, which is not an easy thing to do, believe me, because they might make good drones, but they don't do good customer service. And so that eventually I got some money back, not all of it, but enough to make me think, actually, no, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going. And so I got the second one. And yeah, it was, yeah. And there was that stemmed me to learn from that mistake, which wasn't my fault, but I still thought there's probably other things I could maybe do in the future to mitigate against if that's going to happen again.
It shows you things can happen that aren't within your control.
Yeah, and it's a big learning curve, because, like, you know, these things are so well built that they go off, they fly. You think it's invincible in the air, and they're really not. And you learn the limits of these machines. You learn it's almost how to, you know, what respect they need, because it's a very, very complex hobby and a very rewarding one. And if you love it and you want to learn, get into it. So I guarantee you won't regret it.
Brilliant. Well, Oli, it's been brilliant chatting to you, and thank you so much for doing this, the first interview for the channel. This will go down. So this will be available next couple of days or so for people to view. And if you've enjoyed this chat that I've had with Oli, please subscribe to the channel. We're going to put some links in with Oli's social media and links to maybe the piece of work that he did for the British Photography Show. Thank you ever so much for your time this evening. Much appreciated.
Oh no, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's great. I love talking about these things, and it's great to talk.
And it's great to catch up with you again, especially what with COVID at the moment. It's not a great time for anybody, but I do hope that, you know, things do get back to some normality in about 4 weeks' time, and you can get back out on that boat with your drone and get
Well, we've all got to be a bit patient. We will be allowed back out again, and we will fly again.
Yeah.
Just in the meantime, if anyone is my very last bit of advice, if you can't fly, try learning other skills related to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Techniques. So when you're ready to go out again, and you know it's a sunny day and we're all allowed out, you've got things to practice.
Or research places to go.
Research top 10 places where you live.
Yeah. You know, if you've got transport, you know, a 4-hour drive is nothing, is it?
Not when you can get some of the shots you can and look at them and think, I took that.
Yeah. I mean, I do look forward to the time that our group can get back together and meet up again.
Yeah.
It was such a shame because nobody was expecting what this happened this year. But I hope those guys are doing well and they're safe and their families are safe. And you look after yourself, mate, and your family.
Yeah, you too, Andy. Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Take care, guys, as well. Stay safe, everyone. And yeah, look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you, Ollie. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching this episode, and a big thank you to Ollie once again. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. We will be doing more and more of these interviews, and hopefully, as time goes on and I get better at this, we will be doing some live streams where you'll be able to join in and ask questions of our guests. Till then, thanks for watching and take care and be safe. Take care.